Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. Marcus Aurelius. It's a perfect quote to start out the discussion on the second aspect of perception in Stoicism, and that is to recognize our power. And the power that we can discover is the realization that harm, suffering, and all of that is almost entirely created by ourselves, by our perception, by the story that we tell. And in this section of the book, it tells an incredible story of a guy named Reuben Hurricane Carter, who back in the day was wrongly convicted of a triple homicide and received 3 life sentences. This guy went to prison for something that he didn't do, and he was supposed to be there for life. However, he recognized his power was in his perception, and so he refused to be treated like a prisoner or to feel like a prisoner. He recognized that there were some beliefs that absolutely could never be taken away from him, even if he was in a jumpsuit and chains. And that was A, his attitude, B, his beliefs, and lastly, his choices. So he spent the entire time, every waking moment that he could, working on his case. And even though it took him 19 years to finally prove his innocence, he came out of prison a better man and actually used that completely awful, like worst case scenario kind of thing that you could ever imagine, being wrongly convicted of a triple homicide and been sent to prison, as a catapult to make him an incredible person. And if he's able to do that under those circumstances, there are no circumstances I can imagine that you and I are under that we can't find a way to use for our benefit. And that is the point of this section of perception, is that there is the event that happens, and that is completely subjective. However, then there's the story that we tell ourselves about what that event means. And that is the objective part. And that's what we have control over. We have control over our story. One of the amazing things I think about Reuben's story is that even when he comes out of prison, he doesn't do a civil lawsuit to try to recoup what he'd lost. He doesn't even ask an apology from the court because he didn't want to imply that he had been harmed in any way. And he probably didn't recognize at the time that he was employing these, thousands of years old Stoic principles, but he was embodying them, and better for it. The point is that situations by themselves can't actually be good or bad. It's the judgment about them that we bring to those situations through our perception that ends up being either good or bad, positive or negative. Shakespeare even said it, that nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And then I think perhaps the best quote or principle in this entire chapter comes from Ryan Holiday when he said, "It's through our perception of events that we are complicit in the creation in every one of our obstacles." And so we may see the thing that is in our way, that obstacle, as something that is just happening in the world, but really it's our beliefs and the story that we're telling ourselves about that is creating the obstacle itself, which is really enlightening to think about. And the good news about that, obviously, is that if we are complicit in creating the obstacle, then of course we can be complicit in breaking it down and destroying it. So again, there's the event. There is something that is happening in the world, but way more importantly is there is a story that we're telling ourselves about it. There is a filter, there are lenses that we are seeing that event through, and that is the actual important part as far as what's going to lead us to action or inaction, and it's under our control. We can choose what belief systems are being the filter that we're seeing these things through, and we can adjust where needed that filter to make sure that no unhealthy perspective is leading us to see things in a certain way. So it really is in our control as far as what stories we're going to tell about the events that are happening in the world. And that's fantastic news. That's where our power comes from, that we can decide and control. That is the true power of perception in Stoicism.